Hi, I'm Kallia Reske, and I'm a research assistant in Dr. Amy Delaney's Neurodevelopmental Feeding and Swallowing Lab at Marquette University. We're excited to present our work here today. Here are our disclosures. At the end of this presentation, we hope that you recognize the potential contributions of motor status and experience to feeding skill and nutritional intake. Oral feeding skill development is required to support consumption of age-appropriate food for healthy growth and development. Exposure to new textures at the appropriate age is critical for later feeding and nutritional outcomes, yet the age of onset to solids has been shown to vary by 2 to 9 months, leading to a different amount of experience for children of the same age and different motor abilities. Understanding how age, motor status, and experience impact feeding skill development is important for improved guidelines and identification of PFD. Experience and practice are important considerations when learning a new motor skill. The amount of experience correlates to the proficiency of skill performance, and using the concept of motor learning theory may help to understand oral feeding skill performance. The time frame during which a skill is emerging is called the exposure and practice phases. This would appear to correspond to Vanden Engelhoek's work, which found that gagging resolved at the end of this practice phase. The next phase is refinement, where skills transition from being performed functionally to proficiently. After a 10-week period, development is assumed to have met its endpoint. We were interested in how this timeline would correspond to feeding skill development, so based on the different levels of experience and abilities during feeding development, the goal of this study was to explore potential contributions of age, gross motor status, and experience with textures on feeding skill performance and nutritional intake. We studied 63 infants without PFD, divided equally into 3 age groups, 8, 10, and 12 months. We collected 3-day diet records and developmental information from the caregivers regarding their gross motor status and amount of experience with textures. These children were recorded eating 3 trials per texture that was already in their diet. Oral feeding skills were coded as present or absent for each texture. One-way ANOVAs were conducted to compare the effect of age and texture across skill performance, and descriptive data were generated for skill performance for individual skills using 95% group performance as our criteria. We calculated the percent of nutritional intake for each texture and averaged within each group. Data were analyzed for age and then reorganized by motor status and weeks of experience with soft solids. So all of the data were ultimately organized into unique groupings of children by not only their age, but by their gross motor status and their level of experience with each texture. That means that children of different ages were often grouped together for subsequent analyses. For today, we will discuss the outcomes for the children at 12 months, the walkers, and those most experienced for chewable soft solids. So let's look at our results. These graphs demonstrate the change in nutritional intake by each texture for each group, with percentage of solid intake on the y-axis and age, motor, and experience groups along the x-axis. Here we're focusing on the purple line that shows our 12-monthers, walkers, and most experienced kids consuming similar energy intake by soft solids and relying less on purees, which are here in the gray, or dissolvable solids in pink. Notably for the experience group, after 3 weeks, we're seeing an increase in soft solid intake, which seems to be a reflection of rapidly acquiring skills. So what skills did they use to get there? First, we looked across all feeding skills with percentage of skills performed by each group on the y-axis and each grouping by texture on the x-axis. We found no statistically significant performance differences for our 12-monthers, walkers, or most experienced kids. But we do see that all children performed at least 60% of all skills regardless of texture or group. So we wanted to understand what types of skills were being used for this solid intake. We looked at those skills where 95% of the children in the group performed the skill. Interestingly, group performance differed in both the number of skills and type of skills meeting criteria. The type of skills increased in complexity from age to motor to experience. Further, we organize skills by phase of swallow and show you each individual skill here to demonstrate the increased level of skills performed by the majority of children in each group. What we might be seeing here with the limited skills performed by the age group is a reflection of varying degrees of developmental maturation where motor and experience control for this variability. So in conclusion, we see that age, motor, and experience appear to contribute to skill development and nutritional intake in different ways. Interestingly, infants performed a high level of skills which may be innate or may be a function of earlier experience, because all of our kids had at least 2 weeks experience with solids. We also see an increased number of oral feeding skills achieved by motor status and then again by experience, suggesting that we may need to consider these factors further. We're also very interested in the dynamic changes of nutritional intake by experience, as this really appeared to reflect the developing feeding skills. And of course, of primary interest is how these factors change for children with neurodevelopmental delays and altered feeding experiences. So next, we will study younger and older children to further analyze these variables across all of the groupings we showed you today and to look at how these differ for children with PFD. We'd like to thank our lab for their hard work and passion for feeding, and thank you for your time.